Hello everyone, welcome to our Unity project. This is going to be a maze project. We're going to be focusing on from the art side and the game design side, so we're not going to be focusing on programming here. But we are going to be having to use some external project or packages to be able to build our level and our game assets. And the reason why is because Unity is built to take in assets. It's not really made to create its own assets in some senses. I mean, it'll let you use or create particle effects and stuff like that inside of Unity, and some primitive shapes. So we have inside our primitives we have 3D game objects, but they're all primitives like cube, sphere, cylinder. But we can't change them other than like scaling. So like we can bring in a new cube here, and I can use the scale tool inside Unity to change the shape of the cube, which is one way you can create your level eventually. But you're really limited on what you can do here because you can create a primitive, but you can't make walls that jut out other than creating more cubes and just putting it together that way like Legos. Um, so you can create a level in that way. But when you have an external package like Maya, you can create a level so much more dynamically and have so much different variation that you can't accomplish inside of the game engine. So we're not even going to go here with designing our level inside Unity. We're going to design our level inside of Maya. We're going to be using Maya 2017. So Maya 2017 is for those who have been in my classes before, this is a little bit of a new UI that they're using. I have an introduction to Maya 2017 video if you want to back out and go through the UI, but it's essentially the same thing. All of our tools are still in the same places. They just changed some of the icon looks. They kind of consolidated some of our menu sets, but I'm not going to be doing an introduction to Maya here. I'm just going to kind of dive in. So for those who have an introductory understanding of Maya, you should have no problem just following along. Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump on in here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a project folder for our Maya scene here. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Project Window. And we'll just go ahead and call this one. We'll call this one Unity Maze 01. Okay. Actually, we don't need a 01. Let's just ditch that. Let's go Unity Maze. Location, let's stick on desktop is fine. Okay. All right. Now, a bunch of different ways you can make a level for Unity. Now, you can go ahead and start just slamming together a level and making twists and turns and whatever, or you can modulate the design to where you can create chunks of the level and then put them together in Unity to make it to where the level can go on as long as you want after you've finished inside of Maya. So making it to where the Maya design isn't really making it to where your level is confined to those size limits. So that is the direction we're going to go. We're going to make some modular designs and we're just going to puzzle piece it together inside of Unity. So we'll start out with just creating a polygon primitive cube. Okay, let's pop up there in the middle. Okay. Before I even go down this rabbit hole, I actually want to take one step back briefly, because I want to make sure that I set my project to that project folder I just created. That'll make it to where as I'm saving scenes and working with textures, that these will all go in the right folder. So I'm going to go to Unity Maze. That's the project folder I just created. I'll go ahead and hit set. I'm going to go to save this scene. Sometimes Maya crashes if it's hogging my resources on my computer. Sometimes it'll just go down, unfortunately. So just save frequently. Scene 1, maze, modular. Okay. Continue. Okay, so let's look here. Alright, so first thing I want to do is I want to create myself a corridor. Just a single corridor. I can always change the shape of this, connect it to different corridors or whatever. I'm going to make a single corridor here. Okay. Now something else you might want to keep in the back of your head is that each one of these squares here, this is called the grid inside of Maya. Each one is a centimeter. So when you're trying to think of how big is this going to be when I bring it into Unity, this is a centimeter. Now scale is really relative. So if your guy is only this big, then that's what it will look like inside of Unity. You won't be able to tell the difference really, unless you have some physics running where that will start to become evident on the scale of things. But for now, it's not something I'm really super concerned with. And the transfer from Maya to Unity is 1-to-1, so whatever it looks like in here is what it'll look like in there. Okay, so here we go. We have our cube. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take off the top and the ends. Okay, delete those, and there's our hallway for our first piece, right? Now, you may be looking at this and you're like, oh, well, it's gray on the outside, it's black on the inside. What does that mean? That is what we call normals. Normals are the direction that the texture is facing. So in 3D objects, the UVs only face in one direction, which means that since this is gray, the UVs are facing up. So we want the UVs to face inward since we're going to have our player running down the hallway. So we're going to do, we're going to have our object here selected. We're going to go to UVs, and there's one here called reverse. Let's see here. This is one of the things they changed inside of my 2017. So give me just a moment here. It's under mesh display. That's probably where they moved it to. Reverse, there it is. Yep. Okay. So yeah, they moved it from UVs to mesh display. Alright, so now it's on the inside. Okay, that's good, right? Okay. Now we want to also name this. We're going to call it, let's go to, over here is our attribute editor. Over here is our outliner. It's easier to name things in our outliner. So I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to call this mesh corridor 1. Okay. Good. All right. So our corridor is done. Not horribly complicated. Let's actually go in and texture our corridor because that's part of it. That's something that you can do inside Maya, but you can't do inside Unity, and that's assign the textures in a way that makes sense. So we're going to go to actually the internet and look for a couple of textures. Now you can create these in Photoshop if you know how. It's not that hard. I'm going to pull open right now. I'm going to go and pull up a couple textures that will go to. Let's do sci-fi wall texture. Okay. Go to images, and let's do a couple that are interesting. Okay. So let's say that this is going to be my ground, maybe. Let's call this one my ground. Okay. So we're going to go here, and I'll just go ahead and do save image as. And we're going to go to, let's see here, desktop, and Unity Maze, and we're going to go to source images, and we'll just save it right there. And we'll call this one ground. Save. Okay. And while we're here, let's go ahead and grab some other ones. Oh, let's open it. Let's grab some side panel. Yeah, that one looks good. Let's go ahead and take that one as well. Save image as. We'll do the same thing. We'll call this one wall. Okay. We can always come back here and take some more later on. That's a good starting point for now. Okay. Now those textures we need to create a shader that's going to attach these guys in. So let's go ahead and jump into our Hypershade. We'll create a Lambert, and then we'll start to lay out the UVs for this corridor. So we're going to go to our split screen, so this one here, activate that. I don't need this outliner anymore. I'm going to go to turn this Hypershade, so I'm going to go to Panels, Panel, and Hypershade. Okay. Give it just a minute. Might be choking a little bit because I have Unity, Maya, and Photoshop all open at the same time. I could probably close down Unity for now because I don't really need it open since we're going to be doing most of our work today inside of Maya. Okay, so something to know inside of Maya here, that everything you create is going to be attached to an initial shader, so that as you create things, the viewport renderer can actually make it to where it's visible for you. And that is called Lambert 1 that they're all attached to. Now, we need to create ourselves another Lambert so that we can have it attached to this with a texture in order to not change everything else we create inside of Maya. So everything's going to be attached to Lambert 1 as we create it. Anything we want new textures to be attached to, we need to make other shaders for so that we can display those textures without changing the new objects we create. So just reiterating what I just said. Excuse me. Alright, so Lambert 2, let's go ahead and call this one Lambert Hallway. Okay, that's good. And now we're going to attach a texture to this hallway. So we're going to go over here. And we'll click on this little checker node for the color attribute. This is going to allow us to attach a texture to it. We're going to go to File. We're going to go to Folder. And we're going to go to Ground. Okay. Now, nothing's really happened yet, right? The reason why is because this has not been attached to this yet. So for us to attach this in here, there's two different ways to do it. One, you can drag and drop it on here. The other way is that you can assign it over. Now, the problem that we're going to run into right away is that it's going to attach this floor texture to the walls as well, which is something I don't really want. I just want it on the floor. So for this to work, I have to actually separate the floor from the walls. So I'm going to go to face mode. So this is all I did here is I just selected the model, clicked on it. Right. I'm going to change my component type from object mode to face mode. So right mouse button on the object, go down to face mode. I'm going to select the bottom face here. I'm going to go to edit mesh, and there should be one here that says extract. Move some stuff around here, so I have to make sure I'm still on that one. Here we go. It's down in face now. It used to be at the top with 2015, 2016. So now it's extract. Okay. So what did that do for us? Let's go ahead and see. We're going to go to object mode. Okay, so object mode means that these guys, the walls, are now their own objects. See? Control Z, so put it back in the right position. Okay. Now the floor is its own piece. So let's go make sure our naming is, well, before we go there, let's actually go ahead and attach the shader. So we'll just middle mouse button drag from Lambert Hallway, and we'll just add that to our floor over here, okay? Now, it's attached, but you can't see the textures yet. And the reason why is because you got to make sure that the textures and the viewport is turned on. So to do that, just click on this little ball here at the top, the little checkers on it. That'll make it to where the textures are viewable in the viewport. Okay, so there we go. Here's our texture. Not the way we currently want it, but we're not done yet, so we got a little ways to go. We'll fix this up, don't worry. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to exit out of here. We're going to go back to our single view, okay, and we're going to open our outliner. We're going to rename our two objects here because right now we have, since we separated them, it brought it out into a group. So we can go ahead and keep this as corridor, but let's go ahead and change this name here from mesh. Let's call it GRP now for group. Okay, and inside this group, let's go ahead and call this one here. This is going to be called mesh ground, and let's go ahead and call this one mesh walls. So naming conventions are important when you start to have, especially like a maze like this, when you start having a bunch of different components. It's good to make sure everything is named. Okay, let's go ahead and fix our ground so this looks a little bit more visually pleasing. We're going to go to this little panel right here, which is what we were in before for our Hypershade. And this time we're going to open up our UV editor. So we're going to go back to panels. We're going to go down to panel, and we're going to go to UV editor. Okay. Alright, cool. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the UV texture editor, what we're looking at here, you see this little tan square thing here? That is our UVs for this guy here. Now, that is the reason why it looks super stretched. It's not taking up this entire 1x1 Cartesian spot, which is where our texture is at. So we're going to want to change the scale of our UVs, right? So we're going to go to right mouse button on top of my UV shell, which is this little tan square. I'm going to go to UV, okay? I'm going to do a marquee box around the entire square here, so I'll just hold down left mouse button. I'm going to drag, select all of it. Okay, good. Now I need to scale these UVs up to where they fill up this entire area, right? Okay, just translate it down. Okay. Okay. Now, if we're looking at our texture here, now you can also see that's also facing the wrong direction, right? So I want this metal part to be going the other direction. So I'm just going to rotate this shell here. And something that will help you as well inside of here if you're unfamiliar with the UV editor. Oops, I meant to turn this off, not. Sorry. Bear with me, guys. We'll go ahead and go back to our UV editor. I meant just to close the outliner. Okay, so something that helps to visualize this shell is to make sure this is always turned on. This is toggle shell shaded UV, which makes it to where all the shells have this blue hue. Okay. Since this is red, this is something that I wasn't planning on talking about, but let's go ahead and talk about it anyways. This means that if it's red, it means that the UVs are facing the wrong direction. So that could mean that, actually, you know what? We made them face the wrong direction. So that's done on purpose. We're going to keep that. But in the future, if you see red and it's not displaying correctly inside of Unity, it means that the red is telling you that the UVs are facing the wrong way. Okay. Or they are inside out. But in this case, we want them inside out. Anyways, let's keep back on track. So we're going to rotate our UV shell. So E for rotate. So now the shell is now facing away. And if you want to be a little bit more precise, you can always use these 45-degree rotators. So let's say you want to be precise. I'm going to undo what I just did. Come on, buddy. There we go. So now you can use these rotators, and they'll give you an exact flip. Okay. Okay, so that's the way I wanted it, so that I can look up over here, and this whole thing looks like it's stretched all along here. Perfect. Okay. Now, it's still stretched, so I still got to fix that. What I'm going to do, now something you want to know about this UVs is that even though you can't see this texture anywhere but this 1x1 area, this goes infinitely in all directions. So is all I have to do to make it to where this is tiled and it looks a little bit more visually pleasing, not stretched like that, it's just to scale it, and it'll continue to keep pushing out more floor tiles till it looks right. Okay, gotta zoom down here. Okay, that's looking a little better, right? That's about spot on. Okay, good. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe just make it to where it ends at the end of the texture, so that way if I'm moving it around or changing, I can do that without it looking weird. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to do the walls as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I need to create another shader for the walls. So this one's going to be back to our Hypershade panels, Hypershade. There we go. All right, so we're going to create one more Lambert. I'm going to call this one walls. Now, it's worth noting that these Lamberts don't carry over to Unity. Unity does use Lamberts though, so Lambert is just a shader that makes it to where what you see or what the computer sees in 3D is brought to the screen. So it's think about it as the wrapping paper. When my colleagues brought it up to me this way, it makes sense. And the texture you're seeing here, this floor texture, that is the print on the wrapping paper. Okay. In the 3D object, you wouldn't be able to see without the wrapping paper over the top of it. Okay, so we're going to assign this Lambert walls to these guys. They're assigned there. Now I'm going to go to the shader. I'm going to go to the color attribute. I'm going to go to add a texture file to it. And same thing, I'm going to go to the folder. I'm going to go find that texture, wall texture. I'll go ahead and open that one up. Okay. And we're just basically going to rinse and repeat here a little bit, okay, guys? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now, let's see here. We're going to split this back. We're going to go to panels. We're going to go back to UV editor. Okay. Select this guy here. Okay, so here's our two shells. Okay. I'll just select them both, or take this one. I'm just going to overlay it right on top of this one because they are mirrors of each other, so it makes sense that they are directly on top of each other. And that's something else worth noting, that you can stack UVs. You don't have to have it to where everything is like puzzle pieced and not overlapping in any way. As long as it makes sense in these kinds of ways, it's totally fine to do. Okay. Let's see here. Get both of them. There we go. All right. Scale this up so it takes up all the texture space like we wanted. And then we will bring both sets up. Okay. I think this also needs to be rotated again. I think that was the same kind of situation we're running into. Actually, that's right. We're going to use this 45-degree flipper. Okay. Okay, so same deal. Looks like I'm actually, it was right the first time. Dang it. Alright, so let's go and flip it the other way. That's what's going on. There we go. There we go. Textures are visible on both sides now. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. Let me turn the grid off. We don't really need that on at the moment. Okay, so there we go. We got our first corridor done, right? Or hallway, whatever you want to call it. If you want, we can go ahead and also add in a ceiling. Thing is about ceilings though is that makes it to where unless there isn't lighting in here, it's not easy to see. So let's create a mock ceiling to put in here, and it'll be its own piece. So you just push it off to the side and then put it back in there. But let's go ahead and create one anyway. So we're going to basically make it based off of this one. We're just going to duplicate this one. We'll bring it up, put it up over here. So this is created with the same texture. It'll do the same thing, top and bottom. But we can make it a little bit more interesting, right? What I'll do is I'll add in some edge loops here. Okay. And let's go to face mode. And I'll just extrude this one up. I'll delete off this ends. And let's see here. Let's grab these two edges on the side here. We're going to scale those apart. And yeah, that. Yeah, just a little bit. There we go. Okay, that looks a little more visually interesting. The texture file, though, I think that I'm going to have to replace that because having the ground on the top there, that doesn't look right. So I think Google's still open. Let's go ahead and just take ourselves another texture and we'll insert it. Let's say maybe something like this. Sure, it's by the same artist, so thank you, EonWorks recognition for using your images for demonstration purposes. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Go ahead and call this one here ceiling, and we'll save this one. Okay. And we'll have to go through the same gamut as before. We're going to go ahead and go to panels, panel, and we'll go ahead and go to our Hypershade. We need another shader. So we'll go ahead and create ourselves another Lambert. Same deal, we'll go ahead and add this one to this guy. We'll call this one ceiling, and let's go ahead and attach in that texture. File, folder, and there's ceiling. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump into our UV texture editor. Panels, panel, UV editor. Okay, so let's turn on our white around shaded. Okay, so the texture is actually right, it's just facing the wrong way. So let's go ahead and just rotate this one. There we go. That's okay. The sidewalls here I'm not super stoked with, but it'll be workable. Kind of my case in point with go to object mode, please. Thank you. Okay, so the textures are fine. It's a little stretchy on this part here, but that's okay. I want to, I could attach it to its own shader, but I don't really care to do that at the moment. Okay, well, anyways, our modular design for this corridor is done. I can go ahead and take this guy here. I want to go ahead and make sure the outliner is nice and clean, and clear out the history on these guys. So the history, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Alright, and this one here, that one's a ceiling, so I'm going to go ahead and call that ceiling. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and save this scene here. Okay, now if I wanted to, they do have send to Unity. So if I had Unity already open, I can just send it over there and I'll import it in. But I think that we're going to save that till next lesson. I'm going to go ahead and do a standard export selection. This will make it to where I can take this particular modular piece here and send it to any 3D package, not necessarily just Unity. So let's go ahead and we'll do export selection. So I'll make sure that I have the entire group selected here, and we'll go File, Export Selection, and we'll do it as an FBX. So right now it's set up as OBJ. You don't want to use OBJs because it will combine all your objects down into one object. That's not what I want. So FBX, it'll still be my maze scenes area, so I'm going to call this one corridor. Okay. And export selection. And the cool thing about FBX is it'll also take the texture maps with it, so it'll have the 3D model and the textures. So when we import it, it'll have all of the stuff we need right there. Okay, so we're at a little over half an hour now, so we're going to go ahead and take a break here. Next project, or next lesson, we're going to do another modular piece, and we're going to import them into Unity. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.